Hello, my name is Tamara Bruha, and today I'll be presenting on my honors thesis titled Via a Signal Bypass, Vocaloid Aesthetics in the Case of Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl. In order to best break my thesis down, I will present a brief history and discussion of Vocaloids themselves before diving into my section, a piece of my section on sexuality. So, the story behind Vocaloids began in Japan during the year 2000, when the Yamaha Corporation produced a vocal synthesizer software. And this software, by drawing from a set of pre-recorded human vocals known as a voice bank, similar to maybe Siri, users of the software create songs with vocals by typing in lyrics, a melody, and then customizing and modifying the pitches and sound of the voice as wildly as they want to. This, in turn, was not very successful until 2007, when an illustrator was hired to create a anime-style character for the product, for a specific voice bank. So this voice bank and image, in turn, became one cohesive thing, and it was called Hatsune Miku, or in Japanese, that's the first sound of the future. Now, Hatsune Miku was wildly successful. They reached about 40,000 sales within, her software reached 40,000 sales within the first year, and in comparison, before that, Yamaha was selling maybe about 3,000 total units per year. And so, in addition to that, fans not only created these songs with her voice, but they also drew or animated music videos to go along with the songs that they created that would feature this character, and they would upload it to emerging popular websites like YouTube and Niku Niku Doga, which is like the Japanese equivalent of YouTube. And then, so because of that, the Vocaloid cohort grew, so it became not just Hatsune Miku, but many, many other Vocaloids with specific images attached to their specific voice banks. From there, fans and users created not only music videos, but video games, art, novels, manga, and basically figurines and various other media to circulate with Vocaloids as the focus. And the interesting thing also about Vocaloids is that they have basically no background on them that is official. So they have the official image, their voice bank that can be wildly modified, as well as their height, their age, and their weight, I think, all on the official website. But other than that, there is no history, no personal background. It is entirely blank to allow fans to use their voice banks and use this image to create any sort of character they want, and put them in any sort of situation, any sort of story, and this in turn has allowed for Vocaloids to become these vehicles of desire. Now, my thesis in particular examines one fan-made music video and its song, and it's called Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl. Sorry. I analyzed the video Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl as it serves as a valuable discursive and aesthetic instance to analyze Japan's present anxieties in relation to economic precarity and sexuality. And in this presentation, I will focus on my analysis on sexuality in Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl, and how Vocaloids specifically work in the space between the human and non-human to bypass conventional means of expression in order to create a space for emerging discourse on Japanese sexualities that ultimately concentrate upon anti-reproductive sentiments. Now, before I reach my discussion of sexuality, in my thesis, I present a brief historical and social context of Japan and Vocaloids. Afterwards, I use theories on affect and Allison's study on precarity in Japan, and a comparative analysis of Maria Takeuchi's song Plastic Love to analyze how Vocaloid and humanity in Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl both defines and creates complicated affective instances with a precarious core. Importantly, I note that a pivotal center of Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl comes from the lyrics, "I wish I could, via a signal bypass, get a share of others' sensation of pain." While this is useful in analyzing precarity, it also provides a useful key in exploring how Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl provides a discursive instance on emerging sexualities in Japan. So, Vocaloids such as Hatsune Miku represent a special strand in a sea change of sexual ideology, one that stems from the recent economic and cultural precarity. The financial instability since the 1990s seeps into all aspects of life, including that of the home, the paradigmatic site for reproductive sex. As the concepts surrounding the traditional familial, cultural, and sexual structures of home begin to weaken and crumble, more and more of the present generations turn to alternative means of expressing sexuality using media like Vocaloids. Vocaloids as a medium tend to stand out in terms of representing alternate sexualities because of their complete lack of manufactured personality and sole existence as vehicles of desire. In particular, Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl, or SFE Girl now for short, explores anti-procreational spaces, sexual spaces that inherently fall outside of the government pornography dichotomy by using what might be called a signal bypass of humanity, or skipping over the interpersonal lust of sexuality in order to contend with the larger social context of sexuality as deeply connective beyond physical and person-to-person attraction. So for a short reading, an iteration of SFE Girl, broadcasting an alternate emerging form of sexuality, takes the form of its lyrics pointing to a need for sex to exist beyond or outside of the body. In order to achieve this, SFE Girl first deliberately casts bodily sex in a crude, unappealing light while simultaneously yearning for a deeper connection. The line, quote, "If you can make my brain secrete even more juice, my climax will take me all the way to the other side of the moon," end quote, showcases sexual pleasure in a vulgar blend of the scientific with simple euphemisms. At the same time, it conflates the brain with the genitals, positing the brain as a literal sexual organ. In addition to the lyrics, quote, "After I've shed this stale body," and, quote, "I wish I could via signal bypass get a share of others' sensation of pain," end quote, both point to yearning for something beyond the body. The wish for a signal bypass, to directly skip the need for communication or transmittance of signals in order to immediately understand and receive the pain that others receive, implies a need for a connection closer and deeper than that which having a body allows for. The line, quote, "After I've shed this stale body, I will make my brain secrete even more juice," end quote, further confirms this sentiment, suggesting that there must be an after for the spirit contained by the bodily vessel, with which to experience a pleasure that is only best described by more sex. Thus, sex represents a placeholder or instrument for a deeper emotional understanding yearned for in SFE Girl. SFE Girl argues that the true goal is not to be tied up with thick rope or to climax, but to reach, quote, "the other side of the moon." The body traveling impossibly far distances is seen again in the line, "I want to drown deeper in the narcotics in my brain and wade all the way to the other side of the universe." In both cases, pleasure carries the body to impossible distances both as a potential reference to his desired climax, as well as highlights the true desire behind the act of sex for the singers. Sex, the act of having someone hold me tight and receiving narcotics or a climax, serves as the vehicle with which a deeper understanding, a greater knowledge, or the other side attempts to be reached. However, none of this discourse would have been possible or as accurately transmitted without the vehicle of the Vocaloid body and its inhumanity. Obviously, Vocaloids lack a sexual drive, but beyond that, they also receive and represent alternative, non-procreational forms to sexuality due to the consumeristic nature of their own identity and sexuality in the form of moe. Vocaloids and their character images were created with heavy emphasis on moe features. Moe, a term used to describe deep feelings of strong affection, adoration, and/or excitement towards typically 2D characters, can be hard to define, but easy to invoke in otaku consumers using specific character elements. Take, for example, Miku's long twin pigtails, which we can also see with Wikipedia, the personification of Wikipedia. Intentionally or not, every design choice made reflects a well-known characteristic to inspire moe, although these choices are more likely than not to have been a conscious marketing choice. In the case of the image of Hatsune Miku, as well as her fellow Vocaloid compatriots, each element with its own origins and background constitutes a category that has been developed in order to stimulate the interest of the consumers. It is not a simple fetish object, but a sign that has emerged through market principles. Hiroki Azuma, Database Animals. The use of moe by companies stems from the fact that those who feel moe towards a particular product will aggressively consume the product. Therefore, a good product does not necessarily have to be of high quality, simply of high moe. Even when not specifically underlining the moe elements typically displayed by Vocaloids, by using Vocaloids as the sinker of the video, SFE Girl automatically references a type of sexuality deeply tied to consumerism. More than that, however, Vocaloids have a freedom that human singers, pop idols in particular, are denied, especially with regards to sexuality. So I also take a look at the government pornography dichotomy that comes to when it comes to Japan's sexual ideologies, and I posit that Vocaloids serve as more of a porn-adjacent type of media and discourse around sexuality, and how this allows them to better create a space for emerging sexualities to be discussed and thought about. In addition, I also take a look at the use of the term herbivorous men in the song Spinal Fluid Explosion Girl, and how this relates to traditional, and how it relates to, in scrambles, more importantly, traditional gender roles and traditional Japanese sexual roles, and how the video purposefully tries to confuse the well thought out line and binary that normally is associated with traditional sex. Finally, I would like to thank Professor Wangi in the English department, my honors cohort, friends and family, and Professor Hodge for allowing this all to happen. Thank you very much.